City of the Gods. Getting its name from the much later Aztecs, this great metropolis thrived for centuries and then mysteriously collapsed around 600 AD. Located just some 30 miles northeast of Mexico City, in the fertile valley of Mexico, Teotihuacan was once a military giant, influencing an area that stretched from central Mexico to southeast Guatemala. Teotihuacan was the largest urban center in Mesoamerica before the Aztecs, almost 1,000 years before their rise to power. The city is known for its deliberate and precise architecture and design, magnificent artwork and obsidian artifacts, and monumental pyramids and temples. More importantly, as a result of conquering their neighbors and subsequently ruling them, the culture of Teotihuacan inspired imitation amongst its subjects, allies, and rivals that persisted long after they had collapsed themselves. Teotihuacan began as a group of farmers that cultivated the hills of the valley, began to move down from them, and formed small settlements around the springs of Teotihuacan. It eventually grew into a city that was a hub for artisans and commerce, equal in power to its rival to the south, Cuicuilco. This power dynamic shifted drastically after two natural disasters. Only roughly 50 years apart, the eruptions of Popocatépetl and Mount Xitl disrupted the lives of the people of Cuicuilco, ruining their farmland and causing mass migration further into the basin of the valley, towards Teotihuacan. As a result, the city's population grew by as many as 80,000 people. As the population grew, so did the city, which became a sprawling grid of apartment complexes, pyramids, and temples. The backbone of the city was the Avenue of the Dead, which was roughly 131 feet wide and stretched for nearly 2.5 miles. The size and scale of the avenue are shared by the monuments that are found along the street. On the southern end is the Ciudadela, a grand plaza in which lies the Temple of Quetzalcoatl. The temple itself is a work of art consisting of 6 levels with carved reliefs of both the feathered serpent himself and Tlaloc, the rain and war god. In the 1980s, archaeologists discovered a mass grave underneath this temple containing the remains of nearly 200 healthy warriors that had been sacrificed as part of what experts believe was a commencement ceremony to celebrate the construction of the temple. This signified that the temple was of both great religious and political importance to the Teotihuacanos. This was also the first example discovered of human sacrifice by the Teotihuacanos, who had previously been believed to have been more peaceful than their neighbors. Just past the Ciudadela is where the Rio San Juan intersects with the street. In another display of engineering ahead of its time, the Teotihuacanos had diverted the river via canals prior to the construction of the Ciudadela, as its natural course would run through the plot of the courtyard. Further down the street is the massive Pyramid of the Sun, which is the third largest in the world, outsized only by the Great Pyramid of Cholula in Puebla and the Great Pyramid of Giza in Egypt. The pyramid stands at 206 feet and covers roughly 700 square feet. More interesting than its size, however, is its purpose. The Pyramid of the Sun was used to record sunrises and sunsets on particular dates, which allowed the use of an observational calendar. Not only was the pyramid functional, it was symbolic. Pigment analysis revealed that the pyramid had originally been painted red, seemingly as an effort to make it appear to the gods in heaven that the pyramid was constantly soaked in sacrificial blood. On top of its positioning based on astronomy, the great structure was also aligned topographically with the Cerro Gordo mountain to the north. At the end of the Avenue of the Dead lies the Pyramid of the Moon. The pyramid is outlined by the Cerro Gordo mountain behind it, and it is clear that the Teotihuacanos were trying to symbolize mountains with these colossal constructions. The Pyramid of the Moon was constructed before the Pyramid of the Sun and underwent 7 stages of construction, with at least 3 major commencement sacrificial ceremonies, evidenced by artifacts discovered in tunnels beneath the city. The pyramid is surrounded by 12 smaller pyramids, and in the center of the plaza lies a single large altar, indicating that this area was of great significance as a place for sacrifice and rituals. Many tunnels have been found beneath the pyramids of the great city. Initially, they were thought to be burial chambers, but other information would say no, as no aspect of Teotihuacan seemed to be without purpose. It is likely that they were symbolic of the underworld to the Teotihuacanos. The Teotihuacanos were accomplished artisans, demonstrated by their sculptures, buildings, canals, and most prominently their murals. They were the first to make pottery with a tripod base so that it could balance on its own. They were also capable of detailed sculpting, like the reliefs of Quetzalcoatl and Tlaloc, but their primary form of art was painting. Murals are one of the primary sources that experts use as a means to understand the religion and social practices and organization of the Teotihuacanos. There were murals in nearly every building of Teotihuacan. Even all of the apartment complexes were painted, suggesting that Teotihuacan was a society with a strong central authority and an attitude of state first over individuals. The murals often depicted deities or significant events like the ascension of a ruler or an epic battle. Most often depicted were the great goddess of agricultural fertility and Tlaloc, god of war and rain. The great goddess was often depicted with vegetation growing from the top of her head from under a distinctive headdress adorned with a bird, either an owl or a quetzal. Tlaloc is usually portrayed from the profile perspective, wearing his iconic face mask and carrying a lightning bolt in his left hand. Teotihuacan murals may have also worked as propaganda, serving as a constant reminder in your very home that the state is what matters in the big picture. The most important aspect of the Teotihuacanos was their emphasis on war and conquest, and this is how they left a lasting impact on the whole of Mesoamerica. While the great goddess of agriculture was their primary deity, Tlaloc was a close second. Tlaloc being the god of rain and war, it is believed by many to have inspired Chac, the Mayan rain god. While Chac was god of rain, lightning, and thunder for the Maya, Tlaloc had an equal emphasis on both war and rain. Objects distinct to Teotihuacan provide evidence of how far their sphere of influence truly reached. Tripod pottery was considered so related to Teotihuacan that the mere presence of it in a different area is considered proof that someone had been to Teotihuacan and returned, or they had been visited by someone from the city. One of its most significant contributions to Mesoamerica was the use of the talud tablero building technique, also known as the slope and panel style. It is the alternating building of a slanted surface followed by a parallel platform. The Teotihuacanos were the first to use this method of construction for their pyramids, and as a result, it became one of the most popular styles of pyramids in Mesoamerica and heavily inspired the Aztecs. Teotihuacan as a culture had such a heavy influence on the rest of Mesoamerica is that they were conquerors. They had ruled by hegemony over their neighbors, though the nature of their rule is not entirely clear. Some believe that it had direct and militaristic dominance over the people it conquered, while others think that the adoption of foreign traits was part of a conscious decision to let them retain their culture while simultaneously integrating some of Teotihuacan's customs. Teotihuacan had a major influence on the pre-classic and classic Maya, most likely by conquering several Maya centers and regions. In 378, Tikal was conquered by the Teotihuacan warlord Fire is Born, as recorded by Stela 31 in Tikal itself. Studies of Copan Altar Q, a four-sided carved altar in Copan, show that the first ruler was put into office in a ceremony far away. The altar indicates that this faraway place was likely Teotihuacan, and if not, somewhere in central Mexico. The altar also goes on to describe the installation of Toc Casper as the ruler of Quirigua, some 30 miles north of Copan. The conquest and reputation of Teotihuacan garnered respect, and we can see that the Maya took clear inspiration from them. Their warriors wore the same equipment, from their tortoise-shell goggles meant to emulate Tlaloc, to the mirrors on their backs, and all the weaponry in between. While the influence they had over their contemporary neighbors was great, perhaps the reason we know as much as we do about Teotihuacan is because the ruins of the city after its apparently deliberate collapse were first discovered by the Aztecs. The Aztecs were struck by the beauty and scale of the city and gave it the name we call it by today, Teotihuacan, or City of the Gods. The Aztecs believed that the city was where the gods had created man and revered it as a holy site. Taking clear inspiration from the style of urban design and pyramids, especially noting the talud tablero style that is prevalent in Aztec architecture. Through the subsequent inspiration of the Aztecs, Teotihuacan's legacy was helped to live on. We can see the influence of Teotihuacan iconography in the huelga bird used by the Chicano movement, and many Latino artists today are heavily influenced by the old style of art associated with the Aztecs. There's no doubt Teotihuacan had a massive impact on all of Mesoamerica, and because of this, its influence can still be felt and seen today.